I was halfway down County Line Road, debating whether to bring a pie or just my usual awkward smile to Sunday dinner, when my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. AVA Delgado, ESQ. Call me now. It's about Emma. I pulled into the Kroger lot and killed the engine. My hands didn't shake. They just went cold, like my body knew something my brain refused to name. I hit call. Mark Sullivan, a woman said, crisp, not unkind. I'm Ava Delgado, attorney. I need you to hear this without panicking. That's a tall order. Your daughter intends to file a petition to declare you incapacitated to manage Sullivan dynamics and certain bank accounts. She'll request temporary guardianship over company decisions pending a psychological evaluation. My mouth went dry. That's insane. She has a packet labeled Written Evidence Board Notes, a few emails where you passed on an acquisition, a doctor's note after your wife died, and a memo twisting it into declining executive function. There's also talk of a springing clause in your will being misread to imply she should step in. It doesn't say that. Of course it doesn't. The will creates a family trust, not a coup. She's courting 3 younger shareholders. If they sign proxies, she'll claim it's for the company's safety. Classic gaslighting wrapped in fiduciary language. 9s. En raise and life-tancer. So my own kid plays narcissist with a compliance binder. Or someone is coaching her, Ava said. Either way, this is entitlement with paperwork. My reflection in the black screen looked older than 62. What's the clock? She files midweek. Status conference Friday. If a judge buys the narrative, you get ordered to a capacity eval and she gets interim control. We need immediate written counter-evidence. Performance metrics, retention, audited statements, emails that show rational decision-making. Also a letter from your physician, clean bill of cognitive health. I stared at the soft serve sign glowing over my dash like a bad punchline. I've been too nice, I said before I could stop myself. Too forgiving. Maybe I've been an enabler. Being a parent isn't enabling, Mark. But boundaries are overdue. I could hear myself breathe. In, out, in, out. If I fight, I lose her. If I don't, I lose everything else. False binary, Ava said. We fight clean, and we fight now. Text me your email. I'll send a checklist and a litigation hold. Do not confront her tonight. People who weaponize concern love a blow-up they can cite as instability. No. I gave her my address. Within a minute, the subject line hit. Capacity petition, immediate evidence needs. There it was in bullet points, bank statements, board minutes, independent valuation, care plan for long-term leadership, and a note. Document the grief, don't deny it. Grief isn't incapacity. Thank you, I said. One more thing. Ava added. If there's anyone whispering in Emma's ear, we'll find them. Gaslighters leave fingerprints. I hung up and sat listening to the heater click. The sun slid under a lid of clouds, and the grocery lot turned the color of an old bruise. Sunday dinner was 7 minutes away. I started the car. Because of course I did. If she was going to pretend this was about love and safety, I needed to see how far the act would go up close, across a table. I parked in front of Emma's house right on schedule, like muscle memory had driven me there. Westerville evenings always had that quiet suburban calm, porch lights glowing, dogs barking 2 streets away, the smell of someone's fireplace. Nothing about the scene screamed betrayal. That's how gaslighting works, it wraps itself in normal. Emma opened the door before I even knocked. Dad, you're early. Her voice was bright, warm, rehearsed. She wore her usual cream sweater, the one Maggie bought her for her first promotion. The sight used to make me proud. Now it felt like a costume. Traffic was light, I said. My tone sounded casual, but my heart was still somewhere back in that Kroger parking lot with Ava's words echoing. Capacity petition, guardianship, written evidence. The smell of roasted chicken hit me the moment I stepped inside garlic, rosemary, and deceit. Lily's been waiting all day, Emma said, taking my coat. She drew you something special. My granddaughter came running, pigtails bouncing, holding up a piece of paper covered in crayon chaos. Grandpa, look! It's you and Mommy at work together. 2 stick figures, smiling under a crooked roof labeled Sullivan. The drawing punched harder than any court document could. It's perfect, sweetheart, I told her, forcing a smile. You made us both look like superheroes. Emma's eyes flicked to mine for just a second. Guilt, fear, or calculation. It was gone before I could decide. "Lily, why don't you go show that to Daddy?" Her husband, Graham, appeared from the kitchen carrying wine glasses. He was the kind of man who called everyone buddy, but never meant it. "Mark, Pinot Noir, okay? It's from the same vineyard as last time." "Sure," I said, even though last time it tasted like gasoline. We sat down at the table, the four of us, like a Norman Rockwell painting that had started to crack. Lily chattered about preschool. Emma listened, smiling. But her phone buzzed twice on the counter and she kept glancing at it. Reflex. Corporate reflex. I tried to breathe normally. "How's the finance department holding up?" I asked, pretending to cut chicken. Emma froze just long enough for me to notice. "Dad, can we not talk about work tonight, please?" Her tone was soft but firm, boundary inversion. She was the one setting them now. "Sure," I said. "Family time's important." Her shoulders relaxed, relieved I didn't press. That was the thing about narcissists. They mistake silence for surrender. Across the table, Graham cleared his throat. "We've been reviewing some modernization proposals. AI integrations, remote workflows, that kind of thing. Emma's got some great ideas." I met his eyes over my glass. "I bet she does." He smiled, thin and cold. "Just trying to keep Sullivan dynamics relevant in a changing market. Of course. Nothing wrong with evolution as long as it doesn't eat its parents." The air tightened. Emma jumped in. "Dad, please, you're tired. Let's not do this." I almost laughed. Gaslighting 101. Reframe the target as irrational, emotional, unstable. Ava had warned me. I turned to Lily instead. "Sweetheart, tell me about your drawing. What's Mommy doing here?" "She's the boss," Lily said proudly. "And you're helping her." Graham chuckled. "Out of the mouths of babes, right?" The words landed like darts. Emma smiled politely, but I saw something flicker in her face. Regret. Maybe. Or the last gasp of conscience. Dinner went on with small talk about weather, recipes, Lily's art show. Every minute felt like an act. My fork scraped the plate, steady rhythm against the soundtrack of betrayal. When dessert came, apple pie from the bakery down the street, I caught a glimpse of a folder half tucked under Graham's laptop on the sideboard. I could make out the edge of my company's logo, and below it, one word in bold. Evaluation. He saw my eyes catch it and casually slid his laptop bag over the folder. "Emma," he said lightly, "don't forget to email those forms tonight." Forms, not even trying to hide it. I set my fork down. "You two have a busy week ahead, huh?" "Always," Graham said. "You know how it is, Mark. Deadlines, deliverables." I smiled the way you do before surgery, tight and necessary. "Yeah, I know exactly how it is." Emma walked me to the door afterward, wrapping her arms around me. "Drive safe, okay? Roads are slick tonight." Her hug felt hollow, a gesture rehearsed for witnesses that weren't there. "I will," I said. Then I pulled back just enough to look at her face. "You've got your mother's eyes, Emma. Don't use them for this." She blinked, confused or pretending to be. "For what?" "Whatever you're planning. Think you have mind. Think you have mind." They came's the red. For the first time all evening, her mask cracked. "Good night, Dad." The door closed softly behind me. Outside, the air smelled like rain and thawing snow. I stood there a long moment, looking at the yellow light spilling from their kitchen window. Through it, I could see them moving together, her washing dishes, him typing on his laptop, plotting something they thought I'd never see coming. But I'd already seen it. I'd seen the written evidence on the sideboard, heard the subtext in every word, felt the knife behind every smile. I got into my car, the crayon drawing still in my pocket. As I drove off, I told myself one thing out loud, just to hear it in the air. They think I'm losing control. Let's show them what control really looks like. I didn't go home after that dinner. I drove around Westerville for an hour, just letting the snow hiss under the tires, while my brain replayed every second of Emma's smile. The smell of roasted chicken still clung to my jacket like a bad memory. By the time I parked outside a 24-hour diner near Columbus, it was almost midnight. Ava had texted me an address and 3 words. "We should talk." She was sitting in a corner booth, a laptop open, a legal pad beside her, sleeves rolled up. She looked too awake for the hour. Her eyes were sharp, not the kind that wait for you to feel sorry for yourself. "You look like a man who just realized the house is on fire." she said. It's not on fire, I said, sliding into the seat. It's just been sold while I was sleeping. Ava smirked, then got serious. You were right not to confront her. They're already spinning a narrative aging founder resistant to progress, erratic, emotional since his wife passed. It's textbook framing. She's giving them reason to doubt you before you even walk into court. I stared at the laminated menu. My hand still smelled faintly of dish soap from Emma's kitchen. Who's coaching her? Ava turned her laptop around. A spreadsheet filled the screen names, phone numbers, percentages. Meet your daughter's allies, 4 shareholders under 45. Guess who's in their ear? Graham Pierce, your charming son-in-law. He's been feeding them projections about doubling returns through automation and AI rollout. He's promising a dividend increase by Q4 if you step aside. By Q4? I scoffed. We're not even done beta testing the logistics module. He's calling it strategic modernization, Ava said. In reality, it's slash and burn economics. He wants to gut your staff and outsource R&D to save overhead. The math doesn't check out, but greed blinds people faster than headlights. I rubbed my forehead. So he's the architect and Emma's the mouthpiece. Pretty much. He's playing to her need for validation. Classic narcissist move, make her feel like a savior while he cashes in. And you, Mark. You're the convenient villain, the sentimental patriarch who can't let go. I let that sit. The label stung because it wasn't entirely false. I'd spent years calling sentiment loyalty, mistaking exhaustion for commitment. Maybe I'd been hiding behind nostalgia because it felt safer than change. Tell me what we're up against, I said finally. Ava opened another file. They're preparing a capacity petition with affidavits from 2 board members citing increasing volatility in meetings. They're using that incident from last fall when you rejected the Horizon acquisition as proof of irrational behavior. I rejected it because they undervalued our assets by 40%. Doesn't matter. They framed it as an emotional outburst. One shareholder even claims you slammed your hand on the table. I was making a point, I said, apparently too emphatically. Don't worry, we can counter this. But we need a paper trail that screams competence. Your clean audit from January, the ISO certification renewal, employee retention, numbers, everything that paints you as consistent, logical, grounded. She paused, studying me. Mark, I know this feels personal, and it is, but we fight it with logic, not anger. The more emotional you seem, the more they win. I nodded slowly. You sound like Maggie. Your wife? Yeah. She used to say the same thing, win with calm. She was the rational one. I was the dreamer. Ava softened for the first time. For what it's worth, dreamers build things lawyers later have to protect. I smiled despite myself. So what's our plan, counselor? Step 1. Gather evidence. I'll file a protective injunction first thing tomorrow to block any unauthorized motions or transfers. That freezes your accounts and company assets until a hearing. Step 2. We identify who's signing with Graham. We isolate them with facts. No emotions, no rants, just data. People flip faster when you threaten their portfolio, not their morals. I leaned back. You've done this before. More times than I'd like to admit, she said. Family business coups are always the same. Love turns into entitlement. Entitlement turns into litigation. Everyone thinks they're the hero. And what about me? Ava met my eyes. That depends on whether you're ready to stop feeling guilty for setting boundaries. I didn't answer right away. Outside, snow kept falling under the fluorescent diner lights, slow and relentless. I spent my life teaching Emma how to be strong, I said quietly. I never imagined she'd use that strength against me. That's the thing about control, Ava said, closing her laptop. People either learn it from you or use it on you. The waitress refilled our coffee without asking. The smell was sharp and burnt, the kind of coffee that keeps you angry enough to stay awake. So, Ava said, flipping to a fresh page on her pad, let's make a list. Who do you trust? I exhaled. Steve from finance. Tom Rourke. My old union rep neighbor, he still knows half the staff. Maybe 2 others I can count on. Good. We'll start there. But Mark, listen, don't underestimate what's coming. Graham plays long con. He's charismatic, manipulative, and he's already made Emma believe this is for your own good. That's the worst kind of toxic, the one that smiles while taking your life apart. Then we take it back. I said. Ava nodded, scribbling something down. That's the spirit. I'll draft the filings tonight. By the time they wake up, the board will know you're not going quietly. When I finally walked back to my car, the wind cut sharp across the parking lot. My reflection in the window didn't look like a man falling apart anymore. It looked like someone preparing for war. I sat there for a moment, phone in hand, staring at the new contact on my screen. Ava Delgado, legal defense, boundaries coach, unofficial. Somewhere between grief and fury, I felt something new rise in my chest. Focus. The family wanted to turn my story into a cautionary tale. I was going to turn it into a comeback. I barely slept that night. The house felt too big, too clean, too silent. Every framed photo of Maggie seemed to look at me with the same quiet disappointment. I sat in my study with the lamp off, scrolling through emails, contracts, reports, proof that I wasn't losing my mind. I just couldn't figure out when providing for my family had turned into defending myself from them. Around 2 a.m., I found a saved voicemail from 3 years ago. Maggie had recorded it the night before her surgery. I never had the guts to delete it. Her voice came through soft and steady, the way it always did when she wanted me to listen. Mark, if something ever happens, promise me you won't mistake responsibility for love. Don't let guilt make you an enabler. Love needs boundaries. Otherwise, it just becomes control in a nicer outfit. I sat there, staring at the dark window, listening to her breathe between words. For the first time, I understood what she'd been warning me about. I hadn't just raised Emma to be strong, I'd raised her without teaching limits. I'd given her authority before she'd earned accountability. That realization hit harder than the lawsuit ever could. I'd been complicit. Every time I said, "She's just ambitious," when she bulldozed through someone's idea at a meeting. Every time I looked the other way when she dismissed longtime staff because they weren't adaptable. I'd been the father who confused patience with virtue, silence with peace. I poured myself a drink and didn't touch it. I just watched the glass catch the light. Ava had called this toxic entitlement wrapped in concern. She was right. Emma wasn't acting alone, but she'd learned somewhere that love meant obedience, and I was her first teacher. At 3 a.m., I opened a new notebook and wrote 3 lines at the top of the page. Document everything. No emotional responses. Protect what's worth protecting. That was the difference between guilt and growth action. When dawn bled through the curtains, I didn't feel broken anymore. Just awake. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. I texted Ava, "Let's fight this the smart way. I'm done apologizing for being right." Then I closed Maggie's voicemail and whispered, "You were right, honey. Boundaries start now." Raid Forson. The next morning, I drove to Tom Rourke's house 3 doors down, the one with the rusted Ford and the Union Strong sticker that had faded to pink. Tom had retired 5 years ago, but he still had the instincts of a man who'd spent his life negotiating with people who lied for a living. He opened the door before I could knock. "You look like hell, Mark." "Appreciate the warm welcome," I said. Tom handed me coffee so black it could have stripped paint. "Let me guess. It's about your daughter." Word travels fast. He nodded toward the newspaper on his porch. Ain't hard to read between lines when your CFO daughter suddenly files administrative restructuring notices with the county clerk. "Can that from in?" I followed him inside. The house smelled like sawdust and honesty. "She's planning to have me declared incompetent," I said, watching his eyebrows climb halfway to his hairline. "Jesus, that's cold. Colder than the chicken she served me while pretending everything was fine." Tom whistled low. "What's the play? Gather allies, expose Graham, build proof that I'm still competent." He scratched his chin. "Then start with people, not papers. The folks who built your company still trust you, but they're scared. That Pierce guy's been whispering promises, AI upgrades, stock options, pay raises, the kind of bait that smells good until it rots. Can you find out who's buying the pitch?" Tom grinned. "You forget who you're talking to? I spent 40 years in labor negotiations. Half those engineers still owe me beers." I laid out Ava's notes on his dining table, organizational charts, shareholder percentages, names highlighted in yellow and red. Tom pulled out an old magnifier like he was reading a battle map. "These yellow ones," he said, tapping the paper. "They're fence sitters. I can talk to a few. Remind them of what loyalty actually means." "Do it quietly," I said. "I don't want Graham catching wind yet." Tom looked up at me over his glasses. You sure this isn't just a pride thing? I mean, you could retire tomorrow and still live better than 99% of Ohio. It's not about money, I said. It's about meaning. You don't let someone torch your life's work and call it innovation. He nodded slowly. Good. Then fight smart. But remember, corporate wars don't end with applause. They end with people bleeding quietly in the background. I'm already bleeding, I said. I just plan to make it count. Tom chuckled. Now you sound like the guy who started Sullivan Dynamics in a garage with $50 and a dream. We spent the next hour mapping out connections who still respected me, who was drifting toward Graham's camp. Tom knew everyone's temperament like a chess player reading the board. Corbin's an ego guy, he said. Show him numbers, not sentiment. Wheeler's practical. If she sees layoffs, she'll flip back to your side. By the time we finished, the dining table looked like a war room. Coffee stains, notes, arrows connecting names like troop movements. Tom leaned back, satisfied. You've got more allies than you think, Mark. People remember how you treated them when the company was small. That's your leverage. Use it. I gathered the papers into a folder. Thanks, old friend. Don't thank me yet, he said. I'm just lighting the fuse. You're the one who's got to make sure the explosion hits the right target. When I stepped outside, the winter air hit my lungs sharp and clean. For the first time since this started, I felt the ground under my feet again solid. Familiar. Mine. I wasn't just defending what I'd built. I was defending the principle behind it. That decency doesn't expire just because technology does. The preliminary hearing took place on a gray Thursday morning. The kind of day Ohio does too, well, cold, flat, and unwelcoming. I remember staring at the courthouse steps thinking, so this is where family dinners end up. Ava met me at the entrance, her expression carved from composure. She handed me a folder thick with our exhibits audits, retention numbers, performance reviews, hard facts to counter the story my own daughter was about to tell. Remember, she said, low enough for only me to hear, you're not here to win her back. You're here to protect the truth. Keep your voice steady. Let her overplay. Inside, the hearing room buzzed with quiet tension. Graham sat beside Emma like a coach next to his star athlete. My daughter didn't look at me. She was dressed in a navy suit, hair pulled tight, confidence rehearsed. For a moment, I almost admired her poise until I remembered who trained her to project it. Judge Meyer called the session to order. The opposing counsel, some polished corporate attorney from Columbus, began with his script. We are deeply concerned for Mr. Sullivan's well-being and the stability of Sullivan Dynamics under his leadership. Recent events demonstrate emotional volatility consistent with post-bereavement cognitive decline. Translation: he's too sad to be smart. They projected emails on a screen, moments I thought were private. One from last winter where I'd told Emma, your mother would have hated this merger. The lawyer read it aloud with mock sympathy. This demonstrates emotional reasoning driving corporate decision-making, he said. Ava objected. Overruled. Then came the so-called witnesses, 2 junior board members who owed their promotions to Graham. They spoke about my mood swings, my unwillingness to modernize, and frequent sentimental interruptions in meetings. I could feel the story being built brick by brick, a caricature of a man who'd lost control. At one point, Emma took the stand. I didn't recognize her voice. It was calm, strategic, almost tender. My father's always been passionate, she said, but lately his decisions have been unpredictable. We're worried about his stress levels. This isn't about greed. It's about protecting him and the company he loves. Protecting me. That word almost made me laugh out loud. It was perfect gaslighting dressed the knife in empathy before twisting it. Ava leaned over. Don't react, she whispered. Let her hang herself with compassion. So I sat there, jaw tight, pretending my chest wasn't burning. I realized in that moment how toxic love can disguise itself as kindness. Emma wasn't just taking my company, she was rewriting our history to justify it. When the judge asked if I wished to speak, Ava shook her head slightly, but I stood anyway. My voice surprised me by sounding steady. Your Honor, grief doesn't make a man incompetent. It makes him human. Everything they've presented as instability is simply conviction. I defended the company the same way I defended it for 30 years with heart and reason. Nothing has changed but the loyalty of those who forgot what built it. The judge nodded without expression and adjourned for review. The room exhaled. I could hear papers rustling, heels clicking, whispers like insects. Emma brushed past me without a glance, but Graham paused long enough to offer a smirk that said checkmate. Outside, the wind cut through my coat. Ava lit a cigarette she didn't even smoke and exhaled slow. They rehearsed every move, she said. Graham's fingerprints are all over it, but overconfidence leaves residue. We'll find it. I didn't expect it to hurt this much, I admitted. That's because you still want her to understand, she said. But people drunk on power don't hear reason. They only notice when it's taken away. We walked to her car in silence. The city looked colorless, washed out by betrayal. I wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. Still, somewhere under that numbness, a colder determination was forming. They'd paraded me like a relic, called me unstable, pitied me in public. Fine. Let them think I was old and finished. That was their first mistake. By the time I reached my truck, I'd already decided. This was no longer about family. It was about truth. And truth doesn't need affection, it needs evidence. I woke up the next morning before sunrise, the kind of restless energy that feels like caffeine and fury mixed together. Ava had texted at 5:12 a.m. Don't confront. Let's bait them. That phrase stuck with me as I brewed my coffee. Bait them. Not fight, not argue, not plead. Bait. By 7, I was in my office downtown, blinds half open, staring at the skyline that used to make me proud. Now it looked like neutral territory, just glass and gravity, waiting to see who'd fall first. Ava arrived carrying 2 lattes and a file marked Controlled Experiment. She dropped it on my desk like a war strategy. We're going to give them what they think they want, she said. An opening. One of the Dew and Manny. She explained the plan. We'd circulate a draft of a new internal policy, a test program requiring dual authorization for any executive expenditure above $50,000. Officially, it was to ensure transparency. Unofficially, it was a tripwire. Whoever tried to override the rule would out themselves as the saboteur. You think they'll bite? I asked. Ava smiled. Narcissists can't resist proving they're smarter than everyone else. They'll bite, chew, and swallow the hook. We sent the memo through internal channels at 9 a.m., marked preliminary. Within 2 hours, it had leaked to the finance team, exactly as Ava predicted. By noon, Tom texted me. Pierce is furious. Says you're strangling innovation. Perfect. By Friday, Graham had done exactly what we hoped. He bypassed the authorization by signing Emma's digital credentials on a temporary approval form. The transaction amount, $247,000. It hit the books as a consulting payment to a shell firm in Cincinnati. Ava traced it in under 20 minutes. He's sloppy, she said, scrolling through the data. The shell company's registered to his college roommate. Not even subtle. What about Emma? Ava hesitated. She's involved, but not in the way you think. The transfer authorization came from her account, yes, but the timing overlaps with a calendar entry marked investor dinner with Graham. He probably had access to her phone. That should have comforted me, but it didn't. It just made everything sadder. Tom came by that evening, dropping his heavy coat on my office chair. Word spreading, he said. People in operations think Graham's selling company data. They're scared. Good, I said, surprising myself with the coldness in my voice. Fear has a way of disinfecting greed. Tom gave me a look. Just don't turn into them, Mark. I'm not, I said. I'm just done being the nice guy. That night, Ava stayed late helping me organize evidence screen captures, email trails, timestamps. She moved like a surgeon, precise and unflinching. Around midnight, she looked up from the screen and said, You realize this is the part where they'll double down, right? Cornered people don't surrender. They escalate. I'm counting on it. She studied me for a long moment. You've changed since we met. I've stopped apologizing for surviving, I said. She smiled, small and tired. Good. Keep that energy. We're about to light a fire. The next morning, we submitted a formal inquiry to the Internal Ethics Board, attaching the consulting transfer as an example of irregular activity. Officially, it was anonymous. Unofficially, it was a message. Within hours, Graham called an emergency meeting with Emma and the finance team. Tom's contact recorded the exchange. Graham's voice came through the audio file, sharp, controlling. This policy is a power move. He's baiting us. But I'll handle it. I'll make sure the board votes before he even knows what hit him. Then Emma's voice, smaller but clear. What if he's right, Graham? About transparency? He snapped. You don't question me in front of people. That was the sound of her leash tightening. Ava played the recording twice, then looked at me. She's scared, Mark. He's not her partner, he's her handler. She's in too deep to see it. I stared out the window, watching snow gather on the rooftops. Then maybe it's time she saw what real control looks like. Forley. That night, I filed a second memo, this one a formal compliance audit request, sent directly to the board's legal department. Attached was every receipt, every fake invoice, every timestamp connecting Graham's signature to the transfers. The bait had worked. Now came the blood trail. When I finally left the office, the city lights reflected off the icy streets like broken promises. For the first time, though, I didn't feel cornered. I felt like the storm everyone else should be running from. Ava insisted I meet with someone before the next hearing. You're strategizing fine, she said, but your head's still living in guilt. That's a liability. Hey. So, I ended up in a small office above a bakery on Main Street, sitting across from Dr. Naomi Chen, a therapist with kind eyes and a no-nonsense tone. She didn't start with the usual pleasantries. She just said, "Tell me what's keeping you up at night." "And everything," I answered. "My daughter, my company, the fact that I can't tell where one ends and the other begins." She smiled slightly. "That's a very American disease, tying self-worth to productivity." I tried to laugh but couldn't. I thought I was giving Emma a legacy. Turns out, I was just giving her leverage. Naomi leaned forward. "You taught her how to win, Mark. But did you ever teach her how to lose gracefully?" There was a cumbling. The question hit harder than I expected. "Probably not," I said. "I never showed her failure without shame. Maybe she's just imitating what I modeled." "But," she nodded, "children copy our coping, not our speeches. And when a parent never says no to avoid conflict, that's not love. That's enabling." The word enabler again. It sounded heavier in a quiet room than in a courtroom. "So what? I'm to blame for this?" "Not blame," she said calmly. "Responsibility. You can't change the past, but you can decide where the cycle stops. You've spent your life proving you're competent. Maybe it's time to prove you're allowed to set boundaries." I looked at the floor. "Boundaries feel cruel when it's your kid." "Cruel?" she repeated. "Or unfamiliar. There's a difference." I thought of Emma's face at the hearing, that mix of confidence and fear. She looked so sure she was right, just like I used to when Maggie would ask me to slow down, to come home earlier. The realization landed like a quiet punch. Emma wasn't my enemy. She was my reflection, distorted by the same habits I never fixed. Naomi handed me a pen. "Write this down. Boundaries are how we love responsibly. Without them, affection turns into control." I wrote it, slowly, like carving it into wood. She asked, "What's your plan moving forward?" "Fight clean, expose the lies, then rebuild if there's anything left to rebuild." She nodded. "Good. But promise me one thing, don't fight from pain. Fight from clarity. Pain wants revenge. Clarity wants restoration." Something loosened in my chest when she said that. I realized how much of my anger was just grief, wearing armor. Naomi checked her watch. "Our hour's up. How do you feel?" "Strangely lighter," I said. Like I finally took off a coat I didn't know I was wearing. Outside, the smell of fresh bread from the bakery drifted through the air. For the first time in weeks, it didn't feel like the world was collapsing. It felt like it was rearranging. As I walked to my truck, I texted Ava. "Boundaries kept. Clarity achieved. Let's finish this." I didn't get an immediate reply, but it didn't matter. For once, I wasn't waiting for anyone's permission to feel steady. A week later, Ava walked into my office with a flash drive, and that look she got when the pieces had finally clicked. "You might want to sit down," she said. "Our friend Graham just left us a gift." She plugged the drive into my laptop. Audio filled the room, grainy, but clear enough to freeze my pulse. Graham's voice, smug and commanding, echoing from what sounded like a conference room. "Emma, slow down. You're over-explaining. The judge doesn't care about context, he cares about tone. Say it like you're sad for him, not angry. People trust grief, cry if you can." Then Emma's voice, shaky. "I don't know if I can do that." "You can. Remember, this isn't lying. It's protecting him from himself." I didn't realize I was gripping the edge of the desk until my knuckles turned white. It wasn't just betrayal anymore, it was orchestration. Every word she'd said in court had been scripted. Ava muted the audio. Security sweep caught this on a backup feed in their building. Legal goldmine. We can prove witness coaching and emotional manipulation. It's enough to bury him, and it shows Emma wasn't fully in control. I stared at the paused waveform on the screen, hearing the silence that followed her hesitation. She's not innocent, I said quietly, but she's been groomed. Graham knew exactly which wound to press. Ava nodded. He found her weakness, the need to prove she's enough. Classic narcissistic control loop. He made her believe she was saving you, when really she was saving his wallet. Tom showed up 15 minutes later, carrying a manila envelope. You're gonna love this, he said. Inside were printouts from internal messages, a chain of emails between Graham and several department heads, promising 20% salary increases after Phase 2 automation. Where'd you get these? I asked. People talk when their raises look impossible, Tom said. Half the engineering floor thinks they're about to be replaced by code. The mood's turning. The emails were a bomb, fake promises, numbers that didn't add up, fabricated projections. He dangled hope like bait to keep them loyal. Ava exhaled, almost smiling. This ties everything together: financial misconduct, manipulation, and emotional coercion. He's been gaslighting everyone, not just your daughter. We sat there for a long moment. 3 people in a quiet room surrounded by proof of corruption. I should have felt triumphant, but all I felt was tired. Winning suddenly seemed smaller than understanding how deep the rot went. Tom finally broke the silence. So what's next, General? They do into the never within. Next, Ava said, answering for me. We control the narrative. Monday's hearing, we don't play defense. We go on offense. She outlined the plan. Present the audio as evidence of witness tampering, the emails as proof of fraudulent intent, and the timeline of money transfers to establish motive. It was airtight, but what caught me off guard was the faint tremor of pity I felt for Emma. She'd thought she was orchestrating justice. Instead, she was a puppet who'd finally see the strings. That night, I replayed the audio alone in my study. Every word from Graham dripped poison. Every hesitation from Emma hurt like a bruise pressed too hard. When the file ended, I just sat there, the room so still I could hear the old wall clock ticking like a heartbeat. Maybe this was what truth felt like, not satisfaction, but clarity so sharp it bled. I called Ava before midnight. File it, I said. All of it. No delays. Done, she replied. Then softer. You okay? I will be, I said. Once she's free from him, and once he's not. When I hung up, I looked at Maggie's photo on my desk and whispered, We're almost there, honey. Almost. Monday came with that strange quiet before a thunderstorm. I arrived at the courthouse early, suit pressed, eyes clear. No adrenaline this time, just a calm that felt almost dangerous. Ava met me on the steps, tablet in one hand, coffee in the other. We're not proving innocence today, she said. We're proving intent. Let him choke on his own script. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Reporters, shareholders, former employees, everyone smelled blood. Graham sat at the plaintiff's table with his usual smirk, confident as a man who'd already written the ending. Emma was beside him, pale, distant, eyes flicking everywhere except toward me. When Judge Meyer called the session to order, Ava stood first. Her tone was surgical. Your Honor, new evidence has come to light, recordings and written communications directly impacting the integrity of this case. Things byword is to them. Graham's lawyer immediately objected. This is a desperate stunt. Ava didn't flinch. The court deserves to hear what desperation sounds like. She pressed play. The room filled with the same voice I'd heard in my office days earlier. Graham coaching Emma, word for word, emotion by emotion. The manipulation was undeniable. The transcript flashed on the screen behind him, each line more damning than the last. Say you're worried about his health. That way it sounds like love. Don't forget the tears, Emma. Crying always sells. By the time the audio ended, the air was so heavy you could have carved it. Emma's hands were trembling. Graham's lawyer tried to pivot, mumbling about context and interpretation. But Ava was already stepping forward with Exhibit B, the email trail from the engineering department. Promises of impossible raises, proof of corporate fraud. This, she said, voice sharp, is not the behavior of someone protecting a legacy. It's the behavior of someone looting it. Judge Meyer's expression hardened. Mr. Graham, can you explain these communications? He stammered something about strategic optimism. The courtroom laughed, quiet, cruel laughter that meant the audience had chosen a side. Then Ava dropped the final blow. The financial transfers, 3 payments totaling $247,000, each routed through the same Cincinnati shell firm. Dates, signatures, digital fingerprints, all his. Your Honor, Ava concluded, this isn't just a family dispute. It's calculated exploitation. A narcissist exploiting loyalty under the guise of progress. The word narcissist echoed like a gunshot. Graham's composure cracked. You think I needed her? He spat, motioning toward Emma. She begged me to help. She said her father was losing it. She wanted me to take over. The judge's gavel struck once. Enough, but it was too late. The mask had shattered. Emma's face turned white, tears slipping down her cheeks. You said this was about saving the company, she whispered. Not destroying him. He turned on her, furious. Grow up, Emma. This is how power works. No, she said quietly. This is how you rot. The courtroom went silent. Judge Meyer spoke with measured gravity. Given this evidence, financial misconduct, falsified documentation, and witness tampering, the court finds in favor of the defendant, Mr. Mark Sullivan. The petition for competency review is dismissed, and the matter of corporate fraud will be referred for criminal investigation. The gavel came down. It sounded like thunder after months of rain. Ava squeezed my arm. It's over, she whispered. But as I looked across the room at my daughter, head bowed, hands shaking, I knew it wasn't over. It was just the beginning of something else. She approached me slowly as the room emptied. For the first time in months, she met my eyes. I'm sorry, she said, voice cracking. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought he cared about me. I nodded. He cared about what you could give him. But now you know the difference. She wiped her face, mascara streaking like war paint. What happens now? Now, I said softly. We rebuild. Not the company. Us. Ava packed up our folders quietly, giving us space. I'll handle the paperwork, she said. You handle your family. These intelligence. As Emma and I walked out into the sunlight, the air felt strangely clean, cold, but honest. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. Sometimes justice doesn't roar. It exhales. 3 days after the verdict, I drove out to Lake Erie. It wasn't planned. My body just knew it needed water, space, and silence. The sky was pale and endless, the kind of gray that makes time feel suspended. For the first time in months, my phone was off. No board members, no lawyers, no crisis. Just waves hitting the rocks with patient certainty. Emma called that morning. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave a message, and I didn't blame her. Some conversations need air before they can breathe again. The company was stabilizing. Ava had stepped in as interim advisor. Tom was coordinating staff morale. And the board had finally remembered what integrity sounded like. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the real rebuilding had nothing to do with spreadsheets or policy memos. It had to start inside the space I'd neglected the longest. Family. That evening, I sat in my kitchen and opened a box Maggie had labeled in her handwriting. For when you're ready. Inside were old Polaroids, me, her, and a toddler Emma with ice cream smeared across her cheeks. There was a note tucked between the photos. Legacy isn't what you build, Mark. It's what you mend. Eyes beat the sea. I don't know if Maggie meant it as prophecy or warning, but either way, it landed like truth. The next morning I texted Emma. Lunch at the lake? No lawyers, no business, just us. She replied within minutes. I'd like that. When she arrived, she looked smaller, somehow less armor, more human. She sat across from me at the old picnic table, hands fidgeting with the coffee cup. For a while, we didn't talk, just listened to the gulls and the water and our own awkward breathing. Finally, she said, I don't know how to face everyone. The board, the staff, you. You start small, I said. You tell the truth, and you let time do what apologies can't. She nodded, eyes glistening. Do you really forgive me? I thought about that for a long moment. Forgiveness isn't one thing, Emma. It's 1,000 small decisions. Not to hate you. That made her laugh through tears. That sounds exhausting. It is, I said, smiling. But it's worth it. We walked along the shoreline after that, talking about everything except the lawsuit. Movies, Mom's favorite recipes, Sophie's new obsession with dinosaurs, The ordinary rhythm of conversation felt like oxygen returning after months underwater. At one point, Emma stopped and said, "Ava told me you refused to press charges against Graham." "Why?" "Because revenge doesn't restore," I said. "It only replays the damage. Let the law handle him. I'm done feeding the fire." She nodded. "I don't deserve your grace." "Maybe not," I said softly. "But neither did I when I missed half your childhood chasing success. So, we'll call it even." For the first time, she smiled without guilt. Before we left, she handed me an envelope. Inside was a proposal plans for a mentorship program at the company, pairing young female engineers with senior leaders. "It's what Mom would have done," she said. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw Maggie's stubborn heart shining through. "Let's build it together," I said. As she drove away, I stood there watching the car disappear into the fog. The world felt still, balanced, earned. Later that night, Ava called. "How's the lake?" "Honest," I said. "Peaceful. Uncomplicated." She laughed. "You know, peace is just the quiet between lessons, right?" "I'll take it," I said. "For once, I'll actually take it." When I hung up, I stepped outside onto the porch. The lake was dark, reflecting the faint lights from town. The air smelled of salt and rain and second chances. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was rebuilding a company or fixing a mess. I felt like I was becoming a person again. Maggie was right. Legacy isn't what you build, it's what you mend. And sometimes, mending starts with finally forgiving yourself. 6 months later, the air in Cleveland finally smelled like summer again. Cut grass, lake wind, and the kind of hope that doesn't make noise. Sullivan Dynamics had survived the storm, not as the empire it once was, but as something smaller, humbler, and strangely stronger. I'd stepped down as CEO, kept a quiet advisory role, and given Emma the title she'd once tried to take by force this time, earned. People called it forgiveness. I called it evolution. The first day under the new structure, I walked into the office with 2 cups of coffee, one for her, one for me. She looked up from her desk, surprised. "You really meant it, huh?" she said. "Every word," I told her. "No power struggles, just purpose." She smiled. "Feels strange, doesn't it? Running this place without fighting for it." "Strange," I said. "And peaceful. Like we both grew up at the same time." We held the meeting in the small glass conference room overlooking downtown. No suits, no speeches. Just a handful of people who'd stayed through the chaos. Emma opened the session by saying something that almost made me choke up. This company was built by people who cared more about integrity than innovation. Let's honor that by proving you can have both. The room applauded softly. It wasn't triumph, it was closure. After the meeting, Tom and Ava joined us for lunch at a diner near the lake. Tom was grinning, grease on his shirt sleeve. "You two actually pulled it off," he said. "Didn't think I'd live to see peace in the Sullivan household." Ava raised an eyebrow. "Peace is overrated. Stability, on the other hand, that's sexy." Emma laughed, real laughter, not the guarded kind she used to have. It filled the room like sunlight breaking through clouds. Tom lifted his glass of iced tea. "To the rebuilders," he said. "The people who know how to start again." We all clinked glasses. For once, it didn't feel symbolic. It just felt right. Later that evening, I went home to the same house that had once felt haunted. Now, it felt lived in again. The walls didn't echo. There were voices. Emma and Sophie had come by to drop off a plate of brownies, and their laughter lingered like perfume in the hallway. I found one of Sophie's drawings pinned to my refrigerator. Me, her, and Emma standing in front of a big building labeled Sullivan Dynamics 2. Above our heads, she'd written in uneven letters, "No fighting, just teamwork." That kid understood more about healing than most adults I knew. Around sunset, I sat on the porch with a glass of water and watched the lake shimmer in gold. I thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the courtroom, the betrayal, the awakening, the forgiveness. It was all still inside me, but it didn't ache anymore. It just existed, like scars that stopped needing explanation. Ava called just before dusk. "You sound lighter," she said. "I am," I told her. "For the first time, I'm not trying to fix anything. I'm just living." "Good," she said softly. "That's what winning actually feels like. It's quiet." We hung up, and I sat there listening to the sound of cicadas and the hum of distant traffic. The world was simple again. Maybe that's what all those revenge stories get wrong. They end at justice. But real life starts at peace. The real victory isn't proving someone wrong, it's finally being okay with yourself. As the light faded, I whispered a quiet thank you to Maggie, to Ava, to the chaos that broke me open enough to change. Tomorrow would come like any other day. But for once, I didn't dread it. I looked forward to it, because this time, the story wasn't about survival. It was about living on my own terms. If this whole ordeal taught me anything, it's that peace of mind isn't a luxury, it's survival. I spent most of my life thinking love meant saying yes, even when it hurt. I thought being a good father, a good leader, a good man, meant absorbing everyone else's chaos without complaint. But I learned that empathy without boundaries isn't kindness, it's self-destruction in slow motion. The biggest lesson I took from this is that no is a complete sentence. You don't need to justify protecting your sanity. You don't have to apologize for walking away from manipulation, even when it comes wrapped in family ties or professional respect. Setting boundaries doesn't make you cruel. It makes you capable of genuine connection, the kind that isn't built on guilt or fear. And healing? It doesn't arrive with fireworks. It shows up quietly in the mornings you wake up without dread. In the conversations that don't turn into battles. In the moment you stop needing to explain your worth. If you're in the middle of your own storm right now, I hope you remember this. You're allowed to draw the line. You're allowed to choose peace over obligation. And you're definitely allowed to rebuild, even if it means starting over from the ashes. So, what about you? Have you ever had to stand up to someone who twisted love into control? How did you set your boundaries, and did it cost you something before it gave you back your peace? Share your story below. I think a lot of us could use the reminder that reclaiming your power isn't selfish. It's healing.